Welcome to Trojans Corner. It's at the 710 ESPN LA 10. I'm Andy Kamenetzky with Brian Kamenetzky, co-host of the Land of Lakers blog at ESPNLA.com and the co-hosts of ESPNLA on air, which can be heard various times on Saturday, depending on how the USC football schedule bumps us. Boo! Boo! Give us a chance to at least mess this up before we boo. Very excited today, heading into USC UCLA. And our guest today, a USC legend, among the Uber coaches in the history of USC football, man who needs very little introduction, John Robinson, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for John Robinson. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Tell us, I mean, you came to USC in 1972, I believe, as a coordinator. Take us back to that point and how you got to USC and the circumstances around that.
Well, I was an assistant at the University of Oregon for a long time. John McKay had been an Oregon assistant, so there was a connection there, and he finally felt sorry enough for me that he would say, okay, come on down and be a coach with us. And I walked in to that 72 national championship team that was maybe one of the greatest of all time. So I thought, man, this coaching at SC is easy. And we had really some great players.
That's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask. You stepping into a situation where you only have 1 year of coaching under your belt at all, of any kind, and you know that you are a part of a team that can stack up against the greats. How intimidating a situation is that?
Well, I don't think you think it's intimidating. Once you're coaching, it doesn't matter where you're coaching. It's the same. You go out to practice. You know, I mean, you're dealing with problems. You know, at SC, the problems were a little bigger than they were. The players were bigger, I mean, and faster. But, you know, coaching is coaching, whether it's high school or the NFL. I've always believed that.
Now, one of the things that people remember from those teams, when you go back to 72 and you start talking about, you know, I think people focus a lot on the tailbacks and the quality of offensive players that you had. As a guy who worked with those players under John McKay, what did you step into? What kind of system, what kind of things were important to the program at that point?
Well, I was devoted to what he did. I copied him when I was an assistant at Oregon. So when I took over for John McKay, we kept same offense, same numbering system. We wanted the tailback to be the dominant figure, whether it was Charlie White or Marcus Allen or whoever. We were going to make that player the dominant player. We were going to get offensive linemen that fit, you know, the kind of culture that we wanted. Just like now, Lane Kiffin is a quarterback oriented. So yes, he's going to have a great quarterback year in and year out, because that's
no matter what happens with, they'll always have that.
Well, you know, hopefully they'll always have that.
What's the key when you're coaching a team with that much talent and guys who are used to being the man at every level? You know, they're coming from a high school where they obviously dominate, and a lot of these guys can dominate on the college level at the same time. How do you keep all those egos in check and keep everybody on the same page?
Well, in most cases, when freshmen walk in, they're overwhelmed. The guys that are there, if you've got a good football team, the guys that are there are a lot better than the freshman. The freshman just isn't ready. Now, occasionally you find a guy like Lee now who can come in and play, and you treat him a little different. But then in the normal process of being a rookie, you go through that. Right. The team puts you through that. I don't know that coaches have to do it. We always had Marv Gou as an assistant for us that was kind of the hammer. Ed Ogeron is the hammer now and here. So they take care of a lot of that that, you know, I think I'm better than I really am stuff.
And you took guys like along the lines of what Andy said, those great freshmen, tailbacks, sophomores, whatever, guys who would eventually run for 2,000 yards and score all these touchdowns. They started off blocking for the guys who came before them.
Yeah, Marcus Allen was we moved him to fullback, and he blocked for Charlie White, and he used to be the first day he was at fullback, he broke his nose and knocked a tooth out of it, you know, and he was crying and moaning, and guys were telling him to shut up and get in there, you know. So you kind of earned your way.
That 72 team, you mentioned at the top of the show that it's among the best ever. It's considered by some historians to maybe be the best ever. Where do you think it ranks? And feel free to be immodest or partisan.
The 72 team certainly might share number one with somebody, but it was the best
Who
team.
do you think it might share with?
The 79 SC team.
That's the right answer right there.
No, I don't know.
That is the correct answer.
But we were a great team. We won it. We got every vote for the national championship at that time. So it was a great team.
How aware are you in the moment as you're going through a season like that with a team like 72 or 79 or whichever one, of how special that team is and how special that moment is? Can you allow yourself to get caught up in it at all, or to drink it in?
Not really. I mean, you're so pressed into what you have to do the next day. I can remember on that 72 team, John McKay and I and another coach stopped at Julie's, that we used to be right over here, had a vodka or two or three, and he said, "This might be my best team ever." That was in September, you know. Right. So he had an inkling of that, but for the most part, you don't see it until just like this football team now. This is a pretty darn good football team SC has. It has some deficiencies, but it's playing great, and that's just happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
We're talking to legendary USC coach John Robinson here, 4-time Rose Bowl winner. Definitely want to talk a little bit about this team, this game, whatever, but I'm curious, what did you learn? Because you went to Oakland for a year and then came back and took over John McKay's program. What did you learn from him about being a coach at a place like SC?
Well, John McKay, like all good coaches, knows exactly what he wants to do. I've really been impressed with Lane Kiffin and that same thing. They know exactly what they want to do. You may disagree. You may say they don't run enough, they pass too much, they play too much zone, but they know exactly what they wanted to do. So John McKay was never in doubt. I can remember going up and saying, "Coach, what do you think about this or that?" And he'd say, "When you get a head coaching job, you put that in. But right now, we're running my."
How hard is that to do, though? Because there's so much pressure from the outside, especially at a football school.
Well, I think what happens to older coaches, you're a head coach for a long time, and you become kind of a CEO, and you got a bright young assistant. Pretty soon you're saying, "Hey, you know, maybe you're right." The great coaches are guys that stay after it, do the research, and are able to.
We always hear about young players, you know, on a stacked team like USC or whatever. They're told they have to wait their turn. You know, you're not going to have as big of a role as you'd like in the beginning, and it's going to come eventually. Is that same mentality necessary as an offensive coordinator earlier in your career, when you know you may have bigger ambitions, but at the same time you're behind? You know, McKay.
John McKay.
Yeah. No schlub.
No, I agree. I think when I was 28, I thought I was a genius. At 33, I knew better, you know.
Right.
So I think, you know, I think you're lucky if you're behind or under somebody that really is mature and knows.
Of course, today's USC, UCLA, it doesn't matter, you know, it's cliche, but you really can kind of throw the records out. It's LA's Super Bowl. Take us to the first time you were the head coach in this game.
We were playing here, obviously. The winner went to the Rose Bowl. That was Terry Donahue's first year, my first year, and they were good. It was a very close game going in. We were ahead, I think, 17-0. We gotten up. and we ran a quarterback draw play to Vince Evans. And Vince Evans was a controversial quarterback.
Yep.
He had played great his senior year, and he ran through the whole UCLA team, scored, put us up, I think, 24-7 or 24-0. I knew then, hey, we're going to the Rose Bowl, so that one always sticks out.
And how much is the rivalry mean? Because you've seen at the pro level, at the college level, different rivalries. How much does this rivalry mean, both to the city, to yourself as a coach, and all of that?
I think, now that we're all here at the Coliseum, this is going to be a great show and a great thing. I think it means a lot, but every game means a lot. The Oregon game meant a lot last week, so every game is. But when it's your friends you play against, there's that little edge. Yeah.
Well, in talking with Anthony Davis a few weeks ago, he told me that actually when you were coaching him, that it was more SC Notre Dame. I mean, that really was the biggest rivalry at the time. Was there a point where SC...
That's because AD had such good games against
Right, that is true. He may be a bit biased. He may be a bit... But has there ever been, I guess, sort of down or up periods with...
I think there is in both,
Right.
When both teams are good, conceivably next year, both teams could be in the top 10, and you're playing for a BCS berth, then it becomes the biggest thing.
Right.
How hard has Lane Kiffin's job been this year?
I think he's done a great job. I don't know how hard it's been, but he didn't have a lot of fans going in. I think he had to be pretty clear in his own mind what he wanted to do and kind of shut out why is he doing this, and I don't like him. He's done as good a coaching job as anybody in the country this year.
What were your expectations when they hired him? Because I'll speak honestly, I was not impressed. I didn't know what type of track record he had on his own, where his credentials stood on, as opposed to knowing how much his father had accomplished. He surprised me.
Well, I think he surprised everybody. My first experience was seeing how they recruited. They recruited as well as anybody could have possibly recruited. So you come out of there saying, hey, this guy can do this. And the times that I was around the program and watched him, I came away saying, this guy knows what he's doing.
And he's in a situation that's very similar to the one you were in with John McKay, where he's replacing a guy who is sort of the gold standard for modern SC football.
Yes. And that's what people constantly, he's no Pete Carroll, or he's no John McKay. And you just got to kind of bear that. There isn't anybody saying that tonight. People are saying Lane Kiffin's really a great play caller. Lane Kiffin understands. So he's well on his way to a great career.
Was there a moment like that for you where people stopped saying, is this guy McKay or is he not McKay?
I lost the first game badly, and people were threatening to hang me from the peristyles there. But after the year, then it was pretty much my team.
What were the differences coaching SC in the 70s versus the 90s and just the game in general?
For the player, I think it's the amount of off-the-field issues that are there. Back then, you're off the field. You were kind of anonymous.
Right.
If you got in trouble, nobody knew about it. Now, Wendell Tyler walks out of a bar and the whole damn country knows about it. That's kind of not fair. But I think that's changed. I think they have to do more work off the field. Our academic things, everybody's academic process is much better. Kids do better. But I think it's scary when you go to bed at night, you think, oh, God, please don't let anybody get in jail.
So you don't envy the modern day coach in terms of, the media age that we're in right now, where there's eyes on these players off the field all the time. The money's bigger now. The temptation's bigger. It's just a different game.
No question. Everything is just accelerated that much more.
If you had to make, again, we're talking to Coach John Robinson, legendary SC coach,
John Robinson.
Rose Bowls. If you had to make an all-time list of your guys, put John Robinson's team on the field, keeping in mind You put like 8,000 people into the NFL and all these things. Who are some of the names that you would pull out?
Well, some of them are easy. You'd have two tailbacks, Charlie White and Marcus Howard.
And you're not just saying that because Charlie's roaming around the tent somewhere, are you? All right, well, yeah.
But Charlie and Marcus, I think quarterback Paul McDonald, who's around. He
coincidentally also here.
Yeah. Think I'm stupid? But I think those two guys.
Charles White, Paul McDonald, ladies
Hey,
and gentlemen.
Charlie. Hey, baby. Coach. How are you, man?
How are you, sir?
Hey, Paul.
Coach.
How you doing, baby?
Good to see you.
Yeah, right here.
Good to see you. How are you?
All right. Thank you.
You're all dressed up.
Folks, Charlie White looks like he could still play.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Paul McDonald looks like he never could play.
That's a fact. So I had him. All I had to do was, okay, what's the great answer to a trivia question? What quarterback played in the same backfield with two Heisman Trophy winners? Yeah? It's all about timing, baby.
Coach, you used to hand the ball off like 30 times a game to guys like Marcus. Is that because? But is that because of who you had throwing the ball?
No. Paul was very good. It's just there was a belief system we had. When we would play, we might give the ball to Charlie 5 times in a row, and then if you took him out, he'd be pissed because you took him out. So why don't you give me the ball again? Charlie, nowadays the back runs the play and he comes to the sideline. Doesn't that bother you?
I can't stand the system now, because they're pulling guys out and just when they get in their rhythm, and it's a mess. But
you got stronger. You got stronger as the game wore on.
That's right.
I remember. Sometimes in the first half you didn't hit your rhythm. Then the second half came around and you were just rolling over people.
No, Charlie was as fierce a competitor. We'd go in at halftime. Charlie had made, I remember this one game, I can't think of the opponent. Charlie had made 120 yards in the first half, carried the ball about 18 times, and John Jackson and I both got Charlie kind of in a corner and started yelling at him. Said, Charlie, you're not running, you're not playing, goddamn it, you gotta come, you gotta pick it up. And then Charlie would yell at us, well, goddamn you done this, and if you give me that damn ball. And John and I kind of go, yeah.
You happen to remember which game he's talking about?
Say that again?
You remember which game he's talking about?
It was about every other week.
So each week you took the bait, each time.
Oh, no, I always just had that competitive spirit. I remember the first time when USC, John Robinson just got hired, and Paul Hackett, John Robinson, came out to my house and to my grandparents' house, and he told me, he says, I'm playing the best player. You could be a freshman, you could be a senior, you could be a fifth-year guy. I'm playing the best guy. And then man stood up to his word, And I got to tell you this story that happened when we went to the Rose Bowl that first year in '77, that Rose Bowl. I did not think that I was going to play because of the fact that Ricky Bell, Heisman Trophy candidate at that time, right? No way I was going to play his last game, right? So I'm telling my boys, my homeboys, people, the way you're going to find me, I'm going to stand right next to John Robinson as he walks, so I can get on the television, So when he started walking, I'm right there, so the boys will know he's, there's Charles. So the third play of the first series, Ricky Bell gets knocked out. And
which was not an easy thing to do, to knock Ricky Bell out of a game.
No, I was like, and now John's yelling, Charlie White, I can't find my damn helmet, right? But anyway, it was, I finally found my helmet, went out there, and it was a, great experience for me because of the fact that, growing up in the San Fernando area, Pasadena was always #1 on our, Rose Bowl, January 1st.
What's going through your head from the minute you find your helmet to the point where you're going out on the field knowing that against all odds, you're actually going to be a part of this game?
I really don't know because I wasn't prepared to be in the game. But actually, once I got started, it just worked out.
Right.
Being a competitor and having some of the linemen come up to you and say, you better be ready to play.
Guys, and Paul, you can answer this as well. How much did you learn? You're learning from Ricky Bell, and then you go and you teach Marcus Allen, and you're learning from the guys who came before you, Vince Evans and people. What was that like to step into that where you knew you had this lineage, this incredible lineage of players that you could learn from, and then to have to carry it to the next guy?
Well, I mean, that's what being a Trojan is all about. I mean, that's what the coaches, when they... By the way, Coach Robinson never came to my house. I was just glad to be at SC. I had to phone him. I said...
Did he take your call?
He did. But okay. That's what it's all about. I mean, it's much bigger than any one of us. It's actually much bigger than Coach Robinson, obviously Charles White, any other Heisman winner. It's being a Trojan. I mean, you just know where the bar is. My first experience, what I remember the most, our first team meeting in the auditorium, and Coach gets up there and says, okay, these are our 4 goals. Number 1, beat UCLA. I'm like, okay. Number 2, beat Notre Dame. 3, win the Rose Bowl. 4, win the national championship. I'm like, man, the bar's kind of high here. This is, I better get to work.
Speaking of beating UCLA, Paul, Charles, just talk a little bit about what this rivalry means as somebody who's been as close to it as you possibly can be.
Well, I mean, I've had the privilege of playing it, and I've had the privilege to broadcast 13 of these, 14 tonight. And it's just special. It's special because it's in the same city. Many of the players grew up with one another, played against each other, sometimes in youth football, certainly in high school. Some same families. Tonight we've got 2 sets of brothers playing.
Yes, that's right.
You got Tevin McDonald for UCLA, TJ McDonald for USC, and you got Marshall and Malcolm Jones playing. So, I mean, that's like in the same family.
Right.
So it's that makes it so special, I think, because it's so close. You see these guys around town all the time.
And then, Charles, for you?
Well, I would have to say, just being in your own backyard, growing up in the San Fernando Valley, that was huge. When UCLA and USC gets together, all the guys would go to my best friend's house, and we didn't drink at that time, but we would sit around and Anthony Davis lived next door to my best friend, and we would just sit around and just enjoy, just that rivalry.
So even as a young kid, you had already chosen your side, and it was SC?
Of course, I had my older brother. When it was time to receive, to get my scholarship, I was thinking about going to University of Las Vegas by all chances, but my big brother came to me and "You're going to USC, aren't you?" "Yeah, I'm going to USC, But UNLV had showed me a great weekend.
As they usually do.
All the work that Coach Robinson did get here. It turns out it was your big brother who closed the deal.
I was, how youngsters are. They don't know, if they're, what their, where their lives are going to be going or where their lives are going to be taking them. But anyway, it was, the UCLA game is to have an opportunity to play in the game. It was, I remember the first time I came out, I could not believe how many people come out to watch a football game.
So, guys, and again, we're talking to Paul McDonald and John Robinson and Charles White. Great Trojans, great USC legends. Let's take a quick moment to look at this game, because, just all go back down memory lane. What is it for USC if they could come out, given where everybody thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season, if they can come back, finish 10-2, beat Oregon, beat Notre Dame, beat UCLA, what does that mean, big picture, for the program going forward? Paul? or John, either one?
I think it's huge. I mean, you know, I think coming into this year with the sanctions and all the stuff that's gone on, people were wondering how it's going to end up. They thought the Trojans had talent, but you know, a lot of difficult challenges this season, right? Obviously, some players left the last couple years. I thought Lane Kiffin's done a fantastic job holding it all together and getting these guys to play. And of course, the win last night was the exclamation point, I think, on how far this team has come. The fact is that they can win this game tonight to be 10-2. I mean, I think it's lights out. Last week's game, I thought, was a turning point, I think, for the program. Going up there and being a team that won 21 in a row up at Autzen Stadium, you know, was absolutely incredible win. Incredible win. I think you're gonna see tonight, and you're gonna see the next few years what that's gonna mean to the program.
Coach?
Well, I think it's in the players. I think the older players are setting an example. When you look at this football team, it reminds me of some of our best teams. Everybody's wide-eyed, everybody's excited. Hell, if you said we're playing tomorrow morning in San Diego, they'd all want to play. And that's the way it was. If you're a freshman on this team, you've seen this team grow and become something special. If you were Marcus Allen and you came in here and you watched Charlie White run with the ball, you would say, wow, that's how you're supposed to do it. Well, that's happening now. Some of these guys are coming in, the young kids are looking at other guys saying, whoa, that's the way to do it. One thing, Matt Barkley has done as much for football at SC as anybody. Back two years ago, we had no president, no athletic director, no coach. Matt Barkley was the face of USC football. And he kind of stood there and was up front, you know, about things he wanted to do. Now, he's led this team to a point of, you know, and I don't know whether he's coming back or not, but he's done a great job as a guy.
Speaking of that question, what advice would you guys give to Matt Barkley in terms of making that decision? And would you give him the advice that doesn't automatically bring him back to USC?
Well, yeah, I mean, he's got to make, and it becomes a business decision. Right. But if you can lead with the heart, I mean, I think Charles can say this and Coach can say this. We've both played at the same college level and the NFL level. I mean, there's nothing like college football. I mean, there's nothing like college football. Matt Barkley's going to always be able to play professionally, but when you got millions of dollars staring you in the face, sometimes that's a hard thing to come to. I think he's going to have great advice. He's got a great family. He's a level-headed kid. He'll do what makes sense for him. You know, it'd be great for him to come back, but I wish him the best no matter what happens.
Charles, your perspective?
I think that's you know, that's something that he has to want to do, because you don't get those 4 years. You don't get that 1 year back. And who's to say, but also you're looking at injury factor, you know, things that could happen next year.
Right.
But, I mean, that's a decision that he has to make. And I think with that family that he has, they're going to make the right decision.
All right, guys, I guess we should probably, we're going to close with anything. We should probably close with some thoughts and predictions. Oh, wait a minute, on today's game, one more.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Chris Claiborne.
Chris Claiborne.
Chris Claiborne.
Hey, Chris. How you doing, David? Good to see you.
Please keep coming.
Hey, brother, you can sit down right here. No, you good.
One of the linebacking legends of USC, Chris Claiborne.
Paul McDonald thinks the Trojans are going to win.
Charles White, Paul McDonald, thank you guys very much.
Would you give this to your engineer? It's a pass for tomorrow's game.
Got it. We'll do.
You still running out of here? Yeah. You still running out of there about 5 flat?
What's up?
What's up, guys?
Chris Claiborne. What did you got Coach Robinson, like dueling microphones here. You got Coach Robinson next to you. What does John Robinson mean to you in terms of your football development, your football career?
John Robinson is the reason I wore 55. I've told this story many a times. When I first got here, I wanted to actually wear number 3, and he said, "No, you're not." He brought me out to the Coliseum on my trip.
What kind of linebacker wears 3?
I told him I was saving it for Keyshawn Johnson.
Oh.
But I wanted to change the number because at the time, it was great receivers that wore the number. In high school, I wore number 30, and Lavelle Woods wore the number at the time. And he said, no, you're going to wear 55. And, I'm grateful for him until now. It's the best thing he ever did for me.
But explain the significance for people who don't know what 55 means. Why it's a big deal that Coach told you to wear that number.
Well, it definitely puts pressure on you when you're coming in because you got to live up to some great expectations. Willie McGinnis, Junior Seau at the time, Ishmael Ifiani had wore it before me coming in. So the expectation was in there for me to come in and dominate and play at a high level.
Coach, do you think people sometimes overlook the other side of the ball because we spend so much time recently with great quarterbacks, the great running backs? Talk a little bit about defense at USC.
Well, defensive players, like they say, win championships. That's a cliche, but it's true. If SC is going to really get in the top 5 or win next year, they've got to have defense. The 2 top teams in the country are 2 defensive teams. I don't think there's any question. And SC has traveled a long way this year on defense. And they have 3 freshman linebackers. Lamar Dawson, a lot like him. And he's wearing that number. And he looks a lot like you. Same kind of characteristics. And so I think, and they have a huge picture of him in the locker room. And Lamar walks by and says, I'll be better than your ass, in a couple of years.
Well, that's the same thing I thought coming in. Willie McGinnis said it's such a high standard. Junior Seau. I was like, my goal was to try to be as good as him or better and to leave my own mark.
Do you guys actively on the defensive side of the ball have to say sometimes, wait a minute, McGinnis and Seau and Ronnie Lott, and don't forget about the great USC players that have come from that side of the ball.
Well, a lot of times what your play speaks for itself. You don't have to really yell it or say anything. Your play speaks for itself, and that's what matters. Production.
But Chris, we had you up on this stage, it was out there, but the beginning of the season, might have even been the season opener, when the expectations for this team, I think, were somewhat unknown, but definitely weren't as high as they've been now. With the season about to end, what are your thoughts on where this team's come?
Well, we talked about that at that time, and I told you that we'd have a great football season, and it turned out to be that. The thing is, this team is very young, so the future looks very, very bright. And even with the 15 scholarship situation, we'll be able to get through it because we're playing such young kids and they're performing at a high level.
Yeah, Lane Kiffin has made a note after every postgame to mention how many scholarship players were on the field, just in case you don't think that they can get by.
Last question, prediction.
45-14 us.
Coach, do you have an official prediction for today?
I think it's going to be harder than we think. Just go your own emotion. Getting ready for Oregon, getting ready for Stanford, we were all scared, weren't you? All of us were scared. Oh, God, I hope we can beat these guys. We got to play good. We're not scared now. So that makes it harder, just in that. That was the thing I always feared as a coach. God, we got to look out. I think UCLA will play well. I think we'll win. I'm more anxious to see if we keep that almost euphoria that we're playing with. If we do, this will be a one-sided game.
All right, well, we want to thank Chris Claiborne here and, of course, Coach John Robinson. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Really
Big round of
appreciate it.
applause for them. Thanks, guys.